Welcome to the Haunted Hacker podcast number, I don't know, Jonathan, what number do you want to give it? Anything between 120 and 130?
Okay. I'll take 120.
Okay, cool,
I'll
awesome.
just take 120.
Awesome. So a little bit of news before we get started. Speaking in Cyprus next week to the Cyprus National Security Conference. Also doing the Cyber Prevent Intervention Workshop for the London Met Police. Other than that, no big news. Other than I just got situated in a new home, so the studio will be built out soon. And the Haunted Hacker 1-year anniversary starts on October 20th, or October 30th, I mean. And it goes from the 30th to the 31st until noon on the 31st. So a 24-hour podcast, which would be kind of epic. Other than that, no big news. Everything seems pretty quiet these days for the most part. Today we have Jonathan Scott. A lot of you know him as Data. He was the #1 ranked hacker in the US, and also a colleague of mine on a podcast venture with Casper. So great to have you, Jonathan. I'm glad you jumped on the show, and I get to spend a little bit of time with you, get to know you, and let the people out there get to know you as well. So why don't you tell me a little bit about your journey and who you are, and you know what you're doing in cybersecurity?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so my name is Jonathan. I've been a security engineer for going on 13 years now. 35. I actually didn't start off as a trained computer scientist or computer engineer at all. I have a degree in philosophy from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. And then probably I think like 8 or 9 years later, I went back to get a master's in computer science. And but by that time I'd already been working as a security engineer for a bunch of different firms. And so I think in that sense it really helped me, maybe not to be too indoctrinated, maybe, and kind of I maybe that's just my justification of what, like, it helped me so much more, but yeah, so I went back and got my master's in computer science, and I started on my doctorate in computer science. And so I'm pursuing that currently. And I've been hacking since I was a kid, like I guess since I was 8 years old. Started hacking. And I know it's kind of like a typical age, right? When you hear people like, I started when I was like, but I mean, I don't know what it is with that age, but that's just, here's a computer, my dad said, if you can fix it, you can have it. And then that's the end of the story, that's all she wrote. So.
Exactly. I think it's a curiosity a lot that drives us towards it, because I started about the same age, 8 or 9 years old. Professor calculator was my first attempt. I actually have one sitting over here. So we have a lot in common, actually. So you went to school in Knoxville. I actually live in Chattanooga now. And you actually live in Texas, correct?
Yeah, I live right outside of San Antonio. Mm-hmm.
That's pretty awesome. So I kind of grew up in Texas. I grew up in Houston. I've lived in Dallas and been all over the state.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty cool. So how does one reach the status of #1 hacker in America? That's a pretty big title.
Yeah, it is. I get asked that a lot, like, cite your sources or whatnot. But yeah, so HackerOne is probably the most well-known bug bounty platform in the world. And so I mean, I had been on it since I got on it in 2020. Kind of did a few things. Actually, it was funny. I didn't even realize until like a few weeks ago my ranking back then. And I posted on my Twitter feed. I said, "Wow, I just found this," and it was, it probably wasn't even really impressive, but it was like like most or up and coming or something like that. It was the #1 spotlight for that. But so the #1 hacker in the US was so every 90 days they have this essentially like a point system, like how many bugs you find and you get points for them. So for this entire 90-day period of I believe it was yeah, I think it was last quarter. So so July, August, September. So yeah, July, August, September. I held the #1 spot in the U.S. for the most vulnerabilities found, and so on the leaderboards on HackerOne, HackerOne.com/leaderboard, and then you click on that 90-day period, you'll see me there. And then it was #4 in the world until I was exiled, until I was kicked out of HackerOne, right? Yeah. But what's funny is it's really interesting. Like actually, I was kicked out after like a month and a half of that 90-day period, but for the rest of the 90-day period, I still maintained #1. No one could catch up. I mean, not to say. I mean, I don't want to seem like boastful. I just I thought it was funny that they kicked me out, trying to kind of prove a point, but yet I still remained, that they couldn't kick me out, I suppose, is what I'm trying to get at. Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. I mean,
you got
yeah,
it.
I mean, that's something to be proud of. I wouldn't worry about boasting. Not many people can say that they were #1 hacker in the U.S. And that bug bounty program, if I'm not mistaken, there was a kid who was probably in his early teens that at one point was making millions of dollars off of bug bounties. And I think that he was part of the HackerOne group, in that competition.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive. I never really got into the whole bug bounty thing, although security research and I was focused on a lot of VoIP hacking for a very long time.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably before we even had those bug bounty platforms. But yeah, so we were talking just recently on Clubhouse, which is really odd to me. Like Clubhouse, I still haven't got the whole handle of that thing. But we were talking about the iOS vulnerability that you found. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that vulnerability and how things are going with that vulnerability now?
Yeah. So wow, which I'm like, which vulnerability? I mean, there's so many, but I actually want to, if you don't mind, I'll speak about the latest one
Sure.
that I found and I disclosed. So this is actually a really big issue with what I found was with an open source code review, and how open source code review is essentially not happening. So what I posted was just recently in iOS 15.0.2, I was reversing the code. So I unpacked the IPSW, and then I unpacked a DMG inside of it. Now, inside of that DMG, so I was doing this because I'm going to be teaching a course in Bahrain for ethical forensic data extraction. And so what I was doing was I was actually pulling data strings out of this from the DMG that I had unpacked, and I found an HTTPS address that was calling back to ISO.org. Now, I don't know why I hadn't seen it before, because I'd extracted these URLs previously, but this one kind of stood out to me a little bit more because of the way it was formed. So it was a URL, not specifically a URI, right? And so this was very interesting to me, that it ended up this URL was actually in a code comment in an open source table that was essentially calling back country codes, and yeah, I was calling back country. It's a country code table so you can see the name like US, United States, CA, Canada, right? Here's the issue. This link was actually bypassing a paywall from ISO.org and going straight to the back door, allowing you to actually pull up all of this data that's behind a paywall, right?
Right.
Well, the issue that gets even deeper there is because not only did it expose a vulnerability, like that initial vulnerability within ISO, which I'm going to say they didn't know, because that code wasn't actually written by ISO.org. Like they didn't provide that code to these developers. And this is just like, this is code that's been like circling around like the open source community since 2009. Okay. And no one's checked it at all. And what it ended up happening is like nested inside of these directories is a giant verbose user list of 10,000 ISO customers, and their usernames, their email addresses, first names and last names, verbose in a giant table. Wow. Literally in a giant table. So so now I'm just like, wait, you got to be kidding me! Like, who didn't check this? Like even you know, so of course I contacted Apple. I did, you know, did the disclosure thing on, like, you know, generally if you follow my tweets, I don't like to do that because I don't want to be bound by NDAs. But I don't accept bounties. It's not my thing. And if they are going to give a bounty, I don't accept bounties for myself, right? I always ask, if you're going to give me a bounty, send it to Charity Water. You know, and I don't want a CVE assigned to me at all. Assign it to the community. Is what I it's just my ethos. You know, but I want to mention that so that if people, you know, oh, you're going to get a bounty, I won't. Personally, it's not what I'm after. But so that's the big thing that actually happened yesterday. And well, there was people arguing with me and saying, this is not Apple's fault. This is the ISO.org's fault. And I'm over here like, well, but there's a paywall and nobody checked nobody knew about the pay. So you bypass the paywall, and that's and then it was, and some guy, some InfoSec guy, he's like, I've only been in here for 2 months in InfoSec, and I can guarantee you that that's not Apple's fault. That's ISO's fault. And this is, and he said something about like security through
obscurity.
Through obscurity. And I'm like, I'm sorry. What is going on? How is this security? What are they trying to hide with a paywall? You know what I'm saying? You got a paywall. What's the obscure part of this?
Right.
And I was like, and I wasn't trying to be a dick or anything. You know, I was just, I'm like, I don't understand where you get that from. I'm willing to talk to you about. I mean, he's clearly, right, you know, new. I don't want to discourage anyone, but I mean, you know, at least he said he was new. Otherwise, I probably would have been like, said something like snide, like. But anyways, so currently right now, as of today, as of October 22nd, at this time, there's 10,000 users still exposed at this point. All of their information, PII, is leaking. There's a couple of media that picked it up and they're writing articles about it, but and of course I disclosed to ISO as well, all the messages and everything. But yeah, it's 10,000 people just hanging out there. Thank you, Apple, for letting us all. It's not Apple's fault, though.
Of course not. Of course not. You know, forget the paywall. You know what I find is what I find is a lot of people in InfoSec, and especially like the broader community, don't really understand vulnerability disclosure or vulnerability research. And they don't understand what goes into it and what mechanisms you're trying to either test or see if you can expand on. And one thing I've noticed with Apple and with a lot of like Amazon and like Alexa and those types of things, there seems to always be an excuse behind what we find. Whether it be, oh, well, you know, we listen for ambient noises in the background, or, you know, all kinds of data is dumped everywhere, and it becomes a feature. And I'll never understand
don't get me started. Don't get me started on the feature.
my first vulnerability that I reported to Juniper, it was a small router, and the router was dumping the internal IP structure publicly. And when I reported to Juniper said, oh, no, that's not a vulnerability. That's a feature of the router. And I thought, wait a minute, you're giving away my internal IP structure as a feature? Feature to who? Somebody on the other end? So
I don't get that.
tell me about the issues you have like reporting vulnerabilities, because I know, especially dealing with Apple,
Yeah.
you must run into a lot of pushback.
Oh man. Okay. So this will lead me into the other Apple disclosures that I've been having. All right. So you know, in 2020, I reported a vulnerability to Apple that they said this is a non-issue, but essentially I was able to like take over my own device through a web browser and then expose all of my information uh, through a web browser. Like so let's and people. All right, so this is where it gets. I mean, I'm gonna be as basic as possible. All right, we have a computer. Let's take a Mac. We're on a Mac, and we plug in our phone to the Mac. Right, we're at Starbucks. It's typical, right? We're charging our phone.
Right.
And then when we plug in our phone, it says, trust the computer, right? Okay, no problem, right? Because that's what happens. Because yes, that's the USB mux daemon. So we do that, and we only have to do it once. We don't have to do it many times because that's the way the protocol works, right? You have a trusted connection, right? And so the issue is that, well, let's just say that you're running a web server in the background because you're a web developer, which web developers go to Starbucks all the time, right? And they work from home. They work, they're freelancers, whatever. And so what I was just surfing the web and scanning everything at Starbucks one day, and I was like, well, this is really interesting, because I can see several of these web devs have their exposed MAMP address. I can tell they were using MAMP. I was scanning like everything, and I was doing just literally like I could see which services were running everywhere, because we're all on the same network. And I'm like, wow, this is really dangerous, because since I can see the name of that computer, right? Let's just call it localhost, and they're running on 8080, right? What I can do is I can actually do a reverse connection, essentially. Like I can, or I not, I can create it. I can create, let's just say, a website, and I can embed Bash into a Java into a job in JavaScript that will call system functions from the computer and force things to happen on the computer if I wanted to, or on a phone that's connected. So I chose a phone. So here's essentially the breakdown, which is it's a remote code execution that I have shown. Many people are on board with it. There's probably like 8 people that are just trolls and they're not on board with it.
Right.
But essentially what happens is, so your your phone's connected to your computer, and I send you a malicious website through AirDrop, and that malicious website say, hey, click on this picture of a puppy, and then once you click on that picture of a puppy, of course, you're still connected to your computer. You're still on a trusted connection. At this point, your phone wipes. It just data wipes, and you have no idea why. But what's happening is I'm calling your own local host that's available, and I'm telling that local host to perform a wipe, because a data wipe, because Apple has this built in. We could use Apple script, or we could use Apple configurator 2. We could use a command, literally like a CFG util erase. Well, it'll erase your phone even if there's a passcode lock, even if there is an iCloud on there. It's going to wipe your whole phone out. Now, so here's the thing. Now, because I'm not trusted with that device, they have to actually accept the AirDrop. But if you have a picture of a puppy on there, I mean, who's not going to click it, right? Okay, a little social engineering there, right? A little bit of social engineering, but it's very possible. So it's a watering hole attack, right?
Yeah.
So it's definitely possible at an office, right? Screw everybody. I'm gonna send all of y'all a picture of a puppy, see what happens. And exactly. So in this sense, I am performing a remote code execution, because I'm executing code by sending you, even though it's on your own machine, I'm still executing it without your consent. So this is a really big issue. And so when I reported this to Apple, they, of course, 2020, they're like, no,
Yeah.
it's not an issue. But so I was like, all right, so let's go a little bit deeper. And so I've had two RCE demos, and the other one was, so I call these vulnerabilities true trust vulnerabilities, and because that's what they are, and you have every authority to execute whatever service the kernel can has access to. You have every right to do that.
Right.
If it's you, so I'm spoofing you, right? Or I'm forcing you into something that you didn't agree to, and you can't stop it. That's the problem. Like once the wipe has executed, that's it.
Yeah,
right?
it's over.
Right. So yes, we are completely trusted, and people are saying, so you're already trusted and you're using open source tools, because I showed I was using libmobile device to pull information, like enumerate like IMEIs, things like that. It's fine. I mean, open source tool. But the point is that, yeah, you are fully trusted, and I'm doing this without your consent. The other one that I showed was, all right, let's just say we're at home. Wife gets mad. She's a techie, whatever it is. And she's like, all right, I'm gonna send you a picture through AirDrop, and we're both trusted on the, we're both trusted on the same host. She can just literally send me that AirDrop and wipe me out. Like, boom, like there's no trust. Like there's like literally no trust. That's done. Like, and so I showed, like, look, I don't have to press OK, because I've already trusted, we're already trusted on the same network and on the same host. That's more of a targeted attack. Maybe right. A spouse, someone said, it's a good way to spy on your spouse, see if she's up to them tricks. They said, see if she's up to them tricks. And I thought that was a funny comment.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so these are real things, not only is it just Apple, but this is the same thing with Google. So essentially, yeah, exactly. So I am abusing the trust that we have in our devices, and this is a really tough thing to solve too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I think there was, so with Android, I did a little proof of concept when I was in the UK. I spun up a AWS server, created a web server, and I hosted my own APK. And on the APK, I called it Cyberpunk 2077. Like it was an actual game for somebody's phone, like, Cyberpunk, whatever. I had 2,000 downloads in less than 24 hours, and just as many reverse shells from those downloads.
Oh, wow!
So yeah, I mean, you can imagine. You can imagine. You get geolocation, you get SMS, you get call logs, you get everything. And so you brought up an interesting point about plugging the phone into the laptop, because that becomes a trusted connection. So all you need is access to the laptop, and you have access to the phone because it's trusted.
Yeah, right. And not even, exactly. Well, not even access to the laptop, right? You need to know how to scan a network, right? And understand. That's it. Drop it into the script, and then AirDrop. Drop the local host address into your script, and then send the payload through AirDrop, and that's it. Like, it's literally a scan of the network. It is a local, it's a local host attack, or excuse me, a local network attack. But either way, I believe it's still valid. It's not been patched. It's not been even considered, even like all this time. But someone actually found an RCE in my RCE.
Oh wow!
And they posted their proof of concept actually after that, and which is really cool. He's this guy. He's an awesome security engineer. He actually works for a really big company too. We're well respected, and so he did this proof of concept where he was able to use the same method as opening up a WebSocket on a Mac, and then from the WebSocket, from the browser, he was actually able to pull up the calculator, and the calculator app from the browser.
Wow!
What? Right? So you know what I'm saying? So you get it, right? So it's a big deal because yeah, you're escaping the sandbox. I mean,
Right.
in a whole nother level. Like, people don't understand, like, all this protected stuff. Like, it's crazy. Like, say, like, it'll bypass MDM provisions. I mean, you're talking about like a whole nother level of, I can't even access that because there's an MDM on here. But if we can just call it straight from the browser, and it brings it up, because it's just, what's going on,
It's
Apple?
crazy. So here's a
Feature,
theory
that's a
that I have.
feature.
Yeah, feature, absolutely feature. That'll be in the
Yeah,
next iOS. So
right.
here's the theory I have. When I was working at Secura Viper Labs, who Avaya now owns them, we did a exploit where we were able to remotely trigger the microphone on a Cisco phone because it's all
Yeah.
HTTP request, right? So all these
Mm-hmm.
phones and all these communication devices, people rarely think about the security on those devices because in their mind, they're still looking at it as just a cell phone.
Yeah.
And so the government, so Secret Service came and watched our demo of that specific exploit. And they were super interested in that because that would eliminate a lot of the need for them to be actually on site. They could drop
Yeah.
in on anybody.
Right.
And I can't help but think that some of these bugs and some of these, issues with OSs are already predetermined, and they're just denying the fact that they exist because they're being used by another party for a specific function. What's your thought on that?
You would be absolutely correct, 100%. So these features, right? These things they are built into the OS, like iOS, AOS, BBOS, yeah, tvOS, Tizen OS, Pebble OS, right? But because there's a standard, right? That's and it may have to be a whole nother podcast in itself. But and so which is, it gets really deep. But what you'll be right, because so when I say standard, all of these OSs for IoT and mobile go off of essentially a domain, a root domain. So say like com.apple.mobile.debug, or like com.android.settings, right? You can see that they all follow the same structure, right? So this is one thing that Pebble OS, all of these things, Tizen OS, same thing. So again, Tizen OS is just like for Samsung TVs, is using Tizen, and then for this Samsung watches, Galaxy Gear watches, right? There's Tizen OS. People it may look like a skin of Android, which it does have a little flavor to it, but it is operating a different OS, but the same structure either way, right?
Right.
So Android open source project, under the hood, the skin on top, so, but now this is you are correct. What I'm saying is, these debug tools that are inside of these OSs, that they interface with the hardware, right? Particularly, let's just take like a Qualcomm chipset needs to have certain, they all have the same commands that we can execute. Let's just say from AT commands. Let's just take AT commands, right? Old school, right? And this is the one thing I teach in my classes, is like, I go back to the basics. Like like we could open up some scripts, or we can open up some programs, but let me teach you like the lower level execution of functionality on these devices, and show you the commonalities. So let's just take like Android, any Samsung Android, and what we do is, if we want to actually test for, let's just say we want to do screen tests or button tests, if we're using Qualcomm chipset, *#0 *# is going to bring up this interface just from a dialer code, right? And then if we do the same thing on a watch, and I made some videos like this, and I show, hey, those dialer codes that I showed you, you do this on the watch, it's going to bring up the same interface, exact same interface. So because these are debug protocols. Now the issue is these debug protocols are being exploited, and their data is being, you can actually listen for their data on these, because they operate on specific ports. Because that debug data, right? The debug data, air quotes on that, is being sent back out to the servers and being analyzed, like what you were saying.
Yep.
And I do show this in many of the videos, and I always do everything live, because I don't want people to think that I'm
Right.
have it's a ruse. But you're right. You will be absolutely right. And then all of this data is being sent out back to being analyzed, right? And then if we can intercept that, which I show people, like, yes, I can show you how to intercept that data. It's beautiful, honestly. Like it's a beautiful data set, like SQLite database with really, I mean, just the structure is amazing,
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right
So,
about it.
this goes back to the days of like jailbreaking phones, because a lot of that was getting access to that debugging program within the phones. And that's the way that we could open them up and do whatever we wanted to with them. But I don't think that the people manufacturing devices really put that much thought into it. Because every device is rushed out to the market. They want to make the money. They don't care about the security. They want to make sure that they're first to market with this product and deal with the security issues later. And
Right.
then, then you get pressure from the government, like with Apple, right? And the terrorists that had the cell phones that they couldn't break into. And they
Yep.
showed like a huge table of Apple iPhones that the FBI was looking for someone to break into because they couldn't get the data or the intelligence off of it. And so this brings me to another conversation where I was in a room with Microsoft, the lawyers from Microsoft, and a couple of developers, and the Secret Service and the FBI and some other intelligence agencies. And they were talking about the Microsoft OS specifically for the NSA. And that was the first time I'd ever realized that there are multiple OSs depending on who you are. And I'm sure that the OS is for, let's say, the Secret Service or for, NSA are a lot more tighter than what we have. And I can't help but think that there's always been that, and I hate to put the tinfoil hat on, but there's always been that 1984-ish Big Brother, we want access to everything. And my whole theory goes back to the creation of the internet, right? So the military and DARPA came up with the internet. And quickly they wanted it in every single home. We want to make this available to the public. Why? Well, now you have a device sitting in your home that they have access to. They don't need to ask your neighbor what's going on inside your home because now they have access into your home. And the same thing with like mobile devices. I think it's the same thing. I think that there are some bugs that maybe people miss, but I think there are some hooks put into the OS to enable law enforcement or government to be able to maintain and track people.
Right. Yeah. Yes, you're right. So these there are reverse shells that I have found. Like so rats. I found rats in a lot of devices. So one of the things that one of my current projects that I'm working on is Pegasus spyware. The analysis, looking for the spyware in devices. I did put out a decompiled versions on GitHub several months ago, which thanks to VX Underground, they're the ones that actually put out a bunch of put out a bunch of good research. Let's call it research material, right? Let's call it that. So what I did was when they announced that they had these, if anybody wanted them, and I said, I'm going to take this. I mean, this is what I've been waiting for. I'm doing my research, and then finally I can actually reverse this, and I'm going to put it out. So there were 4 samples. Decompiled them and then recompiled them. So that you could actually, execute the applications, that you could actually run the APKs, the spyware APKs on your devices. Like that's something that no one had done. So that for research, I mean, it's amazing, right? And the Java is recompiled to a point where you can actually see how, everything functions. And myself, I wouldn't put this out if I didn't try it myself. Right? I installed the spyware on my devices, and it was pretty interesting because we've been saying this whole time that NSO created this, but the applications are in Chinese.
That's so strange too. I mean, that's like a light bulb.
I'm just like, okay. I mean, I've heard of like this this deceptive. Like I know that, so there's been some malware that's deceptive in that sense. That like I've heard of it, right? I've not seen it myself, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe that's possibly what it could be. I mean, but like the binaries inside of these things, like all of it's in Chinese, and really bad broken English, it could be a deceptive thing. Again, I need, so I'm, but the issue is that I've been like reversing and extracting now that I have seen the sample, right? All you need is a sample. This is how do we have a vaccine, right? Like,
Right.
give me a little bit, right? And then we'll go forward. Whether you like it or not, you have something to go off of, right?
Right.
And then you, and again, maybe some sort of a confirmation bias if you're finding the same thing, and we get into metaphysics, right? But it might, I don't know, might be, who knows? It could all, I could be going crazy. But the point, the point is that, so I'm finding this all the way in. Let me see if I can find. So like old phones, like old flip phones,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Oh, and yeah, like old devices, like this, like these, like old LGs, just old devices, Symbian OS, like it's all there. It's all these are right in front of us, right?
Right.
And so like I have Android down like really well.
Oh yeah.
So iOS is, I'm still trying to so it's a little bit of a variant, but once I'm done with the research, I'll post everything, so you can find it. Amnesty International, they've Citizen Labs, they put out a, they're kind of a initial check for your spyware in your devices, program. But like there's been like no contribution from the community to it. It's like, what's weird is like, it's like, hey, you got a trending GitHub repo right now for the Pegasus spyware. I'm like, oh, that's good, but nobody's actually using
Nobody's
it.
reposting. Yeah.
I'm like, oh my god, like that doesn't help.
No, and that's one thing
So,
that really surprises me. So I was on the Clubhouse talk when you were doing the iOS 15.2, and people were shocked, and I was just like, well, why are you so shocked? Like, this has been going on forever. Like, the
yeah,
devices that we have, it's not just phones, it's TVs, it's Alexas, it's Nest doorbells, it's everything. And you
yes,
can't tell me that an entire industry, a technology driven industry, has that many flaws to where you can gain access to everything. That, to me, that screams, hey, this is an operation, this is something that's been going on for a very long time. And
yeah,
it kind of goes
yeah.
back to, I went to Perot Systems, and I had an interview with them years ago and up in Dallas. And I went
Mhm.
into their headquarters, and they directed me to the malware creation lab. And I thought, wait a minute, well, why does the company have a malware creation lab?
Yeah,
But Perot Systems wasn't the only one. Lockheed Martin had their
yeah,
own malware creation lab. So you have to ask yourself, why would they need to create their own malware? And it's because of these. You know,
yes, that's
that
right,
new
that's right.
technology comes out and they have to stay on top of it. They got to look and see how they can maintain control of that.
That you are on point with that. And gosh, soon enough, I'm gonna have, we're in this podcast right now, so I was advised by my legal team not to say too much. But essentially, you're right, right? Because I've been contracted by big tech to create these things,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I've disclosed a little bit on dark web podcast,
Mm-hmm.
but not the whole thing, right? And then I've kind of started leaking a little, these things that I've been doing, and actually putting out. I've actually put out several 0 days, but they are also have remediations to them, right? So that's my point. Is let me show you what's actually happening, and here's some remediations that actions that you can take against it, right? Like I'm not just gonna, hey, here's a 0 day, and then have
Right.
at it, right? So that's not my goal, but you're right though. I mean, this is a real thing, and people think like it's the people that you pay every day for your cell phone service making this. It's the people that power your have the lights on at in your home. It's the people that are delivering and having the cable come to your TV. They're the ones contracting people like me to create this stuff and calling them features. I can't honestly, I can't. If when you see the documents, man, like oh gosh, it literally says these features. That's in my contract.
Mm-hmm.
These features,
Yeah.
and then like, so I'm gonna pay you $1 million for these features. and I'm over here brainwashed, dude. And I'm like, and it took me a while to finally realize, like, yeah, that's just features. I mean, but I'm over here like because they're so smooth with it,
Yeah.
and they're like, here's $1 million, and I'm like, it's a feature, of course it is. And it's just I'm just, but and so the reason I'm coming out with all this stuff too is because it's not a feature, right?
No.
Like these things are dangerous, and um what's done is done, right? But I can help. That's the thing, right? Like, so I've created what I've created, asked by big tech to create these things, but now, let me help stop it, right? Because it's out in the wild. It's in the wild, and people, and these are literally being called features. Like we were just talking about, like the bug bounty programs. Get out of here! Like,
Yeah.
come on! Like,
Yeah, it's crazy. But what really kills me though is everyday citizens. Like they hear it all the time on the TV. They hear it. They see it on movies. They see it in the media. But they act so surprised when it hits them in the face. And it's like, we've been screaming this for years since I've been in the
yeah,
industry, telling people, hey, look, this is vulnerable. This is vulnerable. This is what happens. But everybody is so concerned about having the latest and greatest technology and, having these things in their home to where, they can keep up with their next door neighbor, and they don't understand that by doing that, by buying these shiny pieces of equipment, they're allowing other people into their life that they have no idea. They don't know them. They don't see them. They don't hear them, but they hear everything you do. And that's why I
yeah,
try to tell people, like I do a talk on IoT security, and I talk about security
mhm.
cameras and the different devices and how they're used against you. And people are so shocked. And I'm thinking, why else would they give you this high tech? Why else would they connect you to the rest of the world? And
Mhm.
it's just common sense, man. So like disclosing some of this stuff and dealing with big tech, what are your fears? I mean, I know from my point of view that once you get on somebody's radar, it's hard to get off, and they make
Yeah.
things very, very difficult and very stressful. How have you dealt with that?
Yeah, it's been tough. I gotta be straight with you. I was talking to Alberto Daniel Hill,
Hmm.
who's become just such a good friend, honestly, like family to me now. Literally like guiding me through this process. Like this is the life that I've chosen
Hmm.
because of where I am in my life. Like, my ethos, the way that I see the world now. Here's what's going to happen next, basically. It's like it's like on point. So
Hmm.
at first you're going to be dismissed, right? And you're going to be called a liar. You're going to be called a fraud, right?
Hmm.
And then comes the death threats. And so yes, that's true. Comes the death threats, and then after that, it's going to be like, well, they're going to try to reverse it on you,
Hmm.
like this.
Like
You're
a
just,
criminal.
right, exactly,
Hmm.
which exactly what happened.
Hmm.
And it's exactly what it was just like it was just sequential, and that was just it's crazy because it happened to him, right? Like the craziest thing that one piece that happened to him, and he's a Darknet Diaries episode
Hmm.
25, right?
Yeah.
They like his government thought that Bitcoin was an actual coin, like,
Hmm.
you know what I'm saying? Like, it's crazy, but no. So dealing with it was tough. I've had a lot of support, really great support. I can't even describe how thankful I am, because yeah, the death threats are real.
Yeah.
Choosing, like you and I had talked about before, right? Previously, like last week even. This is a different life, hacktivism. People think it's anonymous, right? Like you're wearing like anonymous is a mindset, right?
Right.
Of not being held down, like, like not being oppressed. That's anonymous. So anybody can be anonymous, right?
Mm.
But now an anon, that's different, right? But
Right.
anonymous it truly is that mindset. But um now I say this because it seems like it's like if you choose this as like a glamorous, like it's super glamorous, like you're a hacker, right? You can no, not many people choose this path of like full public disclosure like this.
Right.
But I felt like I had no other choice. because of the things that I'm disclosing and how vulnerable we are, the state of our security, our data privacy, everything. You know, I work with several human rights groups, and you know, try to you know, teach different you know, efficacies and forensics and extractions and stuff. But as far as the hacktivism goes, as far as hacking and then disclosing, you know, and trying to, you know, trying to stay ethical about it, like blacking out names of people, not to, you know, not to you know, disclose their information, and doing this, you know, of course, it's tough. You do get that pushback, and there's, I honestly, like, it was tough for me and my wife, because there is, well, what do we do? I mean, there's people, like, every car that passed by for, like, you know, several nights, you're just so, you know, worried about it. And then what I do, I'm like, I've done this to my wife, like, why I should just stop. But like, at the same time, I'm like, what do I do?
Yeah.
You know, so it's been tough, and so we're getting through it though. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a difficult way to live. Not only that, but you know, there's definitely different phases to it, right? Like we talked about before. You know, it's a disbelief and the fraud, and then it's paranoia, and then the paranoia gets really bad because they pop up in places that you wouldn't expect, and things happen along the way that just, like, you know, when you go to tell people, they're like, "No, you're just being paranoid." Like, no, bro, it's real. Like, this shit happens. You know, and when you get to a certain point where they've come down on you and taken certain things away from you and made things difficult, you're left at a fork in the road, right? You're left either saying, fuck it, I'm already in this situation and they're already doing this to me, I might as well just go, you know, full bore. Or, you know, what do I do? Where do I go to hide, type deal?
Sure.
And I unfortunately took the previous path and got into a lot more trouble. But I think the first time I noticed that things were going awry was when I started going to the airports, and every time I went to get a boarding pass, it had the 4 S's on it. So me and Chris Roberts used to joke about how many 4 S's we would get in a month. And so just end up on, like, lists like that, and I end up on a no-fly list and an OFAC list. And just getting a bank account was difficult. So yesterday or day before yesterday, I moved into my first apartment in years. I couldn't even put my name on a piece of paper. Like, everything came with an investigation. So it's definitely a different lifestyle. I don't fear as much as I used to, because I've kind of slowed down things and really focused on helping, rather than disclosing. But yeah, I mean, given a chance, if I was to stumble upon anything else, or, you know, there's a project that I'm working on right now that I may end up documenting, but things like that, I start thinking about the past 10, 15 years and what I've been through. And it's like, is it worth it? Is it not? But when it comes to other people's safety and, you know, the general public and people who really just don't know, I feel like it's our responsibility to disclose that stuff, because if we're not going to, these people who know nothing will suffer from it. The encroachment of privacy and losing civil liberties and losing that freedom. We're the ones who are supposed to protect that. And if we don't, we're all going to become sheep.
You're right. I stand with you on that. I stand with you. Who else will do it? And it's so funny. It's so funny because when I started doing all this, and I was getting paid a lot of money by big tech. My former business partner, John Sines, who stole $750,000, stole all my intellectual property. He literally stole everything from me.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like the universe was telling me, like, you're gonna have everything ripped from you because what you're doing. You may have, like, temporary, like, you know, relief, right? Like, and then, you know, after that 50 was stolen, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna make it back. So I made more money, but I made another 500,000, and then that was just stripped from me. Like, everything was just literally like everything was taken. And, you know, I stepped back and I'm like, what is it for, right? Like if I don't, I was just so angry at myself for a long time. I was so frustrated at myself, and like disappointed in like my misplaced anger, right? But it was literally, it's like, you know, I don't believe in God, but I do believe in like the energies of the universe that guide
Mm,
us. And if we can listen, right, and we can feel, that's going to like, here's your sign, like, don't you get what you're doing? You're destroying people's lives. So why? So I'm gonna take everything from you until you realize that,
mm,
you know. um so had the Lambos, had the McLaren, had the Ferrari, had like, I just kept, whatever honestly, if it was a supercar besides the Bugatti, I had it, and then what was it for,
right.
right? What was it for? Because and it makes me think like, is that all I was aiming for, right? That's the greed that I had. That's like it was like disgusting, right? Like when I look back on it, and um but again, that's where I had my misplaced anger in myself, was just beating myself up because I didn't have that money anymore. I didn't have
Right.
that car anymore. And
Mm,
that's the problem. That was the problem. I still hadn't let it go. You know what I'm saying? I still
yeah.
was angry at myself for not having that material item. And now, a lot of things came into perspective, so he stole this money and everything. And people were always saying, well, you can easily make it back. And yeah, but to what end?
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Yeah. So that's yeah, that's my
I
point of
mean,
that is, yeah.
yeah, before I took my chances and had things done and had everything taken away from me, I was living in Dallas, had a really nice home, motorcycles, and pretty much anything that you'd want, right? Had a movie theater
Sure.
upstairs. And when I decided to take that path, everything disappeared. It was like
Yep.
everything disappeared. And, I look back and I wasn't happy, obviously. And I was making decisions out of spite. I wasn't really like, thinking about other people's well being. Um, but now, like when I came back to the States, all I had was a backpack and a suitcase. That's it. Like I could
Yeah.
carry everything in a backpack. And
Mhm.
you hear my Alexa going off.
Yeah. Right.
um, but
Random.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but it's a weird life,
Yeah, it
and
is.
I don't miss what I had back then anymore.
Yeah.
Because the small existence I have, I'm just thankful to have it because I know what it's like to be homeless, to not have money, to not have a job, to be pushed out.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, once you change your mindset and you realize what you're doing and why you're doing it and who you're doing it for, I think makes a ton of difference. So yeah, I mean, I respect your journey. I think when you started talking, I heard you on Clubhouse. I was like, I definitely got to get to know this guy because his mindset is exactly where mine's at. And I think the whole wanting to protect people who can't protect themselves is big. But yeah, man, I appreciate you being on the show and coming on here and discussing
Yeah.
everything you've done. It's pretty epic. Do you have any questions for me about podcast or about the community or anything before we go?
Yeah. How can I send people to be involved in your projects, or do you have a community that you're actively involved with, so that it can
Yeah,
join and have people join as well?
sure. If you go to thehauntedhacker.com, there's a Discord link. We have Discord. We have a magazine. We have all kinds of projects that we're doing, and we all focus on giving back. Um,
Okay,
and just
great.
like yeah, just like any other group, we've grown quite fast over the last year, but we're always welcoming new people, and we're non-inclusive, right? So we don't kick people out because they don't know something, or we only look for
Right.
somebody who's in tech. Like we have 10-year-olds all the way up to 60-year-olds in our
Awesome.
Discord. So yeah, definitely follow. And if anybody wants to
Yep.
follow you or learn more about what you're doing, where can they go? Where can the listeners go?
uh yeah. Jonathan Data One is everywhere. Just that name, I would do recommend. I mean, like, I don't want. You don't have to follow me. Share the content if you find, if it impacts you, if you feel like it impacts you. That's the biggest thing. I don't make YouTube money. You know, I don't make anything off of it. You know, if you follow, I appreciate it because you're interested in the message. But you know, share the content, or even just like what I'm posting is not. I provide you all the facts that I can, and for you to be able, you know, make the decisions and perform these things on your own. And I encourage you to please perform everything on your own that I'm teaching in the lives, that I'm putting in the GitHub repositories. Ask the questions, and you know, post comments anywhere. I'll see it, or some of my moderators will see these things too, and help, because that's the only way that you can help spread the message too, is if you can perform these things on your own and see the results for yourself. So that's what I do ask, is just if you're interested in seeing like what this is all about, what's going on, there's detailed instructions on how to perform everything I'm saying.
Cool.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, Jonathan, and thanks again for being on. And obviously, we'll talk very soon, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I appreciate
absolutely.
it.
All right, thanks.
Thanks,
See you
man.
soon.